Hey guys, welcome back, and there's another interview. This time we're going to cover OLS 29 and its new winner, and this time we are... How do you actually pronounce your IGN?
I think the answer is that nobody really knows how to do that, including me. Kochua, Coach, whatever you feel like, honestly. There's pretty much no wrong way to do it. I'll just answer to anything.
Alright. I'll go with something and probably revert it 100 times or something like that. But yeah, Kochua. So tell us a bit more about yourself before we actually dive into the actual interview. What are you doing outside of LOR and how did you come to LOR?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. Because until about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, everything I did in my life, I guess, was things I did outside LOR. Yeah. So my background. So I think on these interviews you have a lot of really new and exciting up and comers, young people rising through the ranks and winning tournaments. That's not me at all. I'm a guy in my 30s, married, with a job that is increasingly looking like it'll be the career I do for the rest of my life. But I like gaming. I like card games. It's about the only games I'm good at, I guess. And so I've sort of moved in and out, over the years through pretty much all the card games that there are. Some Magic, some Hearthstone. Gwent was sort of the one that I did most of all. Artifact, when that was a thing briefly. And yeah, I played around a little bit in LOR back in the beta, maybe for a couple weeks, over a year ago. Sort of left it to the side, and a couple weeks ago. Decided to sort of look into it, pick it up again, just see where things go and explore it a bit. And it's been a lot of fun. Had a lot of really good help and connections on the Team Aretuza guys that I've known for some years who moved over to LOR. And yeah, just sort of started playing, started trying to gather a collection and rank up. And then entered the OLS tournament sort of on a whim over the last weekend.
And you won it, also on a whim, I guess.
Yeah. I've got to say, that was absolutely not expected. I'm pretty sure I used up all of my luck in this game on the very first go, and I should just retire now as a legend and one and done, won the only tournament and never come back. But no, I like the game a lot. It's been a lot of fun. So I'll probably start my losing streak in the next tournament.
Come on, don't think about it like that. You mentioned other games as well, other card games. So did you play competitively in those as well? Did you try the tournaments in? Did you achieve anything there?
Yeah, it's a great question. So my card gaming has always been kind of on and off, depending on whether I can fit it in around my job or not. Which is something that has never let me play quite as many card games as I like. But it's a balance that I really appreciate and I'm really happy with. So I'll play for a little bit, won't play for a while. And yeah, so in each of those card games, basically the pattern would be, yeah, I could get to Legend or Masters or whatever it was, and a little bit of smaller tournament stuff. But never really had the ability to really grind to the top, because of time and probably skill reasons. So just sort of enjoyed it and tried to find my ways through, doing some competitive stuff. I won, some decent sized tournaments in Gwent and some small stuff, in Artifact and Hearthstone. But nothing ever really too big. It's just been more sort of the joy of playing them and exploring the games along the way. Yeah.
And what made you choose LR as well and start with this game?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So LR looked very promising. Obviously, I'm familiar with sort of the Riot universe and League of Legends as a whole. And what happened when the game really got going is that so I joined the Gwent team when it was a Gwent only team, Team Aretuza, back in 2018. Some years ago now. And a lot of the guys who had done well in Gwent and sort of were my friends from there, they moved over to LOR, back a year ago, I guess, when it started, or in the time since then. And some of them done really well and really enjoyed the game. And so, seeing your friends go over and enjoy a game and do well in it is always kind of an incentive to give it a try and to pester them for tips when you start playing. So that they've been just a big help, and they're probably one of the reasons that I decided to give it a shot.
Is there any of the guys that helped spread the LR virus so you got into the game? Anyone in particular?
Yeah, no, I've been absolutely, probably bugging the heck out of 32 Vamos, who's sort of been the guy I've been going to get initial tips, and additionally, like octopuses who just hit top 32 season the last time, Gavardia, recently Asher, who's somebody that we brought on for LOR to Team Aretuza. I mean, all of these guys. I mean, look, if you had to start a game from scratch and get friends and advisors to give you some tips on how to start, I think you probably couldn't do much better than those guys. They're all just fantastic, super willing to help, and amazing players. So that's been a little bit of let's just say I got boosted a little bit in my first few weeks to try to catch up on the game a bit.
Nice, because those are all great names and close friends of mine as well. But now let's get a little bit into the tournament OLS itself, and we're going to talk about the decks that you have brought. And the first and foremost, I'm going to name it Lee OTK because there's a lot of variants of Lee decks now in LOR. Some people play it with Action, some people play it with Zoe, Targon, or Shurima. So why did you settle on the Zoe version? Why did you bring it?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question, and because what I would like to give you the answer for these questions about decks. When you ask me why'd you do this, why'd you do that, I would love the answer to be that I sat down and strategized it out and came up with the most optimal lineup in the history of deck building with great secret sauce to go win the tournament. The true answer about all of my deck selections is that I have the cards to play. I have history on ladder of playing 2 decks. I climbed with Lee Sin through Diamond, and then I played Akshan Sivir in Masters to 300 LP. And those are the only 2 decks I feel remotely comfortable playing. So I brought those 2 decks. And I started playing Lee Sin before Akshan existed. So I played Lee Sin Zoe and learned how to play the deck. There you go. So that's basically the reason why I chose that one. In terms of card choices, talk through with some of the Team Aretuza guys. Actually tested out a lot of stuff in the 3-drop slot, Fae Folk and Mentor, and I think I saw Mage and Bay or someone put Shadow Assassin in one day, and I was like, all right, I'll give it a try, and it seemed to work absolutely great. So Shadow Assassin is the interesting card choice there, I guess. All the rest of it, I think just a pretty standard Lee Sin, the Blind Monk. Yep.
And since you cannot go really in depth about the deck choices, why does this deck feel very comfortable to you? Like, why is it so comfortable to play with?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So the deck, obviously, I mean, I don't need to say much, right? This deck is known to pretty much everyone. We should probably call him, Lee Sin, the blind stonemason at this point, because the deck just builds a wall of dragonlings, and you just cannot get through it until Lee Sin kills you on the 1-turn combo. So yeah, I mean that's it. Look, it's a Lee Sin deck, and I had some practice on it, which is good. But I like it because if anything, it was a good deck, I think, to teach me how to play Runeterra and to how to play around what the opponent could do, right? Because you always have to be reacting, and so I thought that was a good way to develop some skill, and just played the deck enough to feel reasonably comfortable on it.
And would you say this is because of your playstyle in other card games, or do you like to be more reactive? Do you like this type of archetype?
Yeah, that's actually that's a great question, and kind of humorous because generally I've never been a control player in card games. It's always been mid range or maybe aggressive mid range. So to end up on Lee Sin as sort of the first deck that I got a good feel for Legends of Runeterra was a lot of fun, but kind of weird for me. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot of people out there trying to beat precisely this deck, including some very good players who I ran into in the tournament. And had to get, I think, pretty lucky to beat. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's Lee Sin, right? We sort of most people know how it works, and most people know what its strengths and weaknesses are at this point. I'm just glad it didn't get countered too hard over the weekend.
Did you get into any lineups that would counter your Lee Sin or that you struggled against?
Yeah, so I mean, specifically Floppy Mudkip, who I faced in the finals as well as in the Swiss. He beat me in the Swiss, and I was able to just eke it out in the finals. He not only brought a lineup that was very strong against Lee Sin, but he piloted it quite well, which is really scary, right? You've been playing for a couple weeks, you've got this deck, and then all of a sudden you see these decks, and you're like, I have no idea how I'm going to manage to beat Ezreal Foundry with a Lee Sin deck. And the answer was I didn't. I, just managed to sort of get lucky in the finals to sneak Lee Sin into another matchup. So yeah, there were a few of those out there. If Lee Sin keeps popping up in tournaments, I'd expect to see maybe more going forwards. But I don't know, we'll see.
Yeah, but From this comfort deck to the other comfort deck, Action Sivir. What's the story behind this deck? Why did you fall in love with it?
Yeah, so I started playing around with it when it was Sivir Zed because it was a little bit more aggressive, sort of my past style, and it seemed very strong. And then it sort of evolved over time. Tested out Akshan, seemed good in the deck, put it in there. Played around. I have maybe a little bit slightly more non-standard card choices in a couple places here. But again, it's mostly like 90% just a stock list. That of course is sort of right at the top of the meta here. So it was hard to go wrong with it. It seemed to have pretty solid matchup spreads overall. I felt pretty solid on it. I basically just said, yeah, this is comfortable and strong, and we'll see how it goes. And it worked out pretty well. I think it only lost maybe one game throughout the course of the entire tournament.
Probably the most interesting question about this deck. Why the hell ran Shadowblade?
Well, so you've noticed the Ren Shadowblade, right? The two of there in the 4 spot. But did you notice what was missing in the units?
What is actually missing in the units?
Yeah, so I'll give you a tip. It's an Ionia unit. It's a 2-drop. It's a 2-drop that's an elusive 2-drop. That's a 1/2.
Oh,
Yep.
the young witch.
That gives. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so despite only having been a part of this game now for like I don't know a month, that does not stop me from having strong opinions about certain card choices. And I just think that card is absolutely terrible in this deck. Other decks, maybe Lulu Jinx, I could see the case for it. In this deck, I can understand the theory that you want to give things vulnerable and then chase them with quick attack. But in my opinion, the way to do that is not with a little dirtily 1/2 unit that then gets run over by aggro and just chipped off by Mystic Shot against control. In my opinion, the way to do that is to put more quick attack units in. So if you give something vulnerable on 2 or 3 and you want to chase it with quick attack units, you run Ren Shadowblade and go chase it with a quick attack unit and give yourself some more value on the back end. So yeah, especially with Akshan being a 2 versus Zed previously being a 3, I think the 2-drop slot is a lot tighter now. And I just think Young Witch is never a card you want to play in this deck. But others might disagree.
I think the main reason for playing the young witch there is because you can give quick attack to things like, for example, Ruin Runner, and then because you have Flurry of Fists, it's quite easy to give it double quick attack and let it stick if you want to finish the game.
Yeah, which I totally get that, right? But my problems with that are, that's a sort of later-ish game combo. If the game goes that late, you're probably facing a deck that can kind of deal with your stuff, and Young Witch is easy to deal with. Also, it only gives quick attack on attack, right? Then they have to block, and then you have to give it the double attack. And, that's a cool combo. It's nifty. But it's only, the 4th most broken combo you can do in this deck. And so instead of putting in a card to sort of enable that, I would much, much rather just hit them with a ghosted double attack Sivir for 16 damage or whatever it is 3 turns earlier or something along these lines. So run more ghosts, run fewer Young Witches, and increase your LP. That's my advice for this for people out there today.
And did you find any additional utility for the shadows from Ren Shadowblade? Do they find value in this deck, and how?
Yeah, they can, right? Because your deck is great on offense and terrible on defense. Maybe not terrible, but not nowhere near as good, right? And so just like how you can sometimes use the chargers, right? The 2-mana chargers off of your 1-drop as a defensive play, stall out the board, right? They don't want to attack into that. You can do the same thing sometimes with the Ren Shadowblade for 1 mana, right? 1 mana 4/3, stick it out there. They don't really want to attack into that and give up units. So there's some use for that. I'd say that Ren is a fine card. I'm open to suggestions if people come up with better ones. I just like it a lot more than I like Young Witch. That's basically all it comes down to.
Very nice. I love that even in this meta that it's sort of figured out, or this archetype that's sort of figured out, people still come with innovations, and yeah, here we are, Ren Shadowblade instead of Young Witch.
Yeah, and I have to. I mean, I'm definitely not the first person to come up with Ren Shadowblade. I stole that initial idea when I saw one of, and maybe it was a Drysoth or someone else's deck. But as soon as I put it in there, I was like, yep, this seems to be the way. I'll go with 2 and see where it takes. So yeah, I'm not the first one to come up with the idea, but I'm sure as happy to use it.
This is the way. But last not least, it's the deck that you didn't mention that it's a comfort deck. It's a deck that you didn't mention you played quite a lot. So why Draven Jinx? Why discard aggro?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's a deck I had the cards for. That was a good start. It's a deck that I had played. I feel like I had played some version of a discard aggro for like a week way back in the beta, right? I don't recall if it was the same champs or where it was, but this deck's been around for forever, right? So I at least sort of understood how it worked. I sort of understood how aggro decks worked. And I basically just said, look, it's an aggro deck that's pretty good against other aggro decks. It's an aggro deck that can sometimes, just high roll the crap out of bad matchups. We'll throw it in there. It seems to have a decent power level. We'll throw it in there and see what happens. And it was by far the worst performing deck I had in the tournament. I think it went 4-4 or 5-4, something like that. But that was enough. I hit my head against some Lee Sin walls a few times with it and didn't get through. But then some other games, I just drew the nuts. And if you're going to win tournaments, especially if you're probably not the most skilled player, sometimes you just have to draw the nuts. And so, fair enough. That's discard aggro for you in a nutshell, I guess.
Did you build the version yourself? Did you theorize through with the guys from Aretosa, or what's the story behind building this list?
Yeah, this is super standard. I guess, you could consider a couple of other tweak card choices. I threw in one Boom Baboon because it seemed entertaining. There's nothing too special here. It's pretty much card for card with maybe one or two exceptions, what most other people or everyone would run. Yeah.
Why this deck? Why this aggro deck instead of other aggro decks? Did you not get to experience other aggro decks, or did they not feel like home?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I considered pirate aggro, I guess. I don't know. I think I don't know. I didn't really have strong sentiments either way. I think that some of the guys I was talking with probably preferred this over pirate aggro. And yeah, I know it was fine enough, right? So as somebody with like a statistics job in real life, the one thing that I really like doing is crafting like well optimized lineups with a plan and that are coherent. And that you can go in and say, okay, I know what I'm doing in this tournament. I want to do X with this lineup. And this lineup, I just ran in and said, all right, forget X. We're going to play some decks that we know, and then a deck that we can hope to high roll with. Thankfully, those decks were all pretty strong decks, and we did high roll with the high roll deck. So, sometimes the process is only okay, but the outcome is better than you would have expected.
Right, so let's recap a bit. A combo deck in Lee Sin Zoe. We've got a mid-range combo mid-range deck that was Action Sivir, and then a combo aggressive deck. And like aggressive combo and mid-range. What did we try to counter? Did we try to counter anything?
Yeah, no, it's fair enough. It's fair enough. I mean, Lee Sin has some polarized matchups. There's some stuff that it's quite good against, and some stuff that's quite bad against. The other sort of aggressive front foot decks, I was just sort of hoping that the matchup spreads would be decent enough overall. What are we explicitly trying to counter? I don't know. There's some slower stuff like like Thralls or etc. that having aggressive decks into isn't bad, and that Lee Sin's pretty decent against as well. Did I really expect to see a lot of that? No, not really. I guess if you bring a Lee Sin counter lineup, it's probably very good against Lee Sin, but probably not so good against the other two decks. So I don't know if that's a help or not, but no, there really wasn't. I was just trying to bring generally decent decks, and in the future, I'd love to bring some more lineups that work better together. Although now that I've won a tournament with this one, I feel like I'm like sort of obliged to give it a try again in the future. So we'll see. We'll see.
I love it. Imagine there's someone there that's tinkering every single little bit of detail about their lineup, about their list, and they're like, I guess I lost against a guy that plays 3 decks for fun.
Yeah. I mean, there's a little bit more to it than that. I definitely did do some analysis behind the scenes, ran some numbers, said look, I think this lineup is okay enough. And I don't want to downplay it like I just totally went in and had a YOLO weekends. I mean, there's comfort is I think a viable strategy, right? And in a lineup, and in a card game, it really helps to find decks that you feel good with. And despite running into 2 or 3 matches where opponents had Lee Sin counter lineups, I think Lee Sin only lost twice or something the entire weekend. I think it was like 5-2 or 6-2 or something on that. Right. So by and large, when I wasn't getting directly countered, I felt strong enough on the decks and got the rolls, right, so that it worked out. So that's I think that's reasonable enough as a deck building strategy. Would I love to have comfort picks that all synergize well together? Yeah, that's the goal going forward. But to go in there and put up a good showing, it really does help to play something that you feel pretty strong on. So that's I guess the recommendation to take out of that.
Nice. I think this is also going to be useful for other people that are aspiring to play in tournaments as well. But did you have any expectations regarding the meta in this tournament? Any decks that would be very prevalent or decks that wouldn't show up as well? And did those expectations get met?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you show up to a tournament bringing a deck that's like a Lee Sin, you're sort of crossing your fingers and hoping that the whole tournament is an anti Lee Sin, and there was more anti Lee Sin than I was hoping for, and it still somehow worked out. So that's I don't know if that's an NA thing. I don't know if that's a competitive tournament thing. I guess I still have to figure that out by entering into more tournaments and seeing what other lineups people bring. But by and large, there's a decent sampling across. There's a lot of decks out there that people play right now. And there's a lot of different lineup strategies that you could bring together, and there was a pretty good diversity in OLS, which is fun. I mean, you got to play against a bunch of stuff, including some decks that I'd literally never played against until they showed up in the tournament. Most notably, Ezreal Foundry. I had no idea how that deck worked until I looked at the list and tried to figure it out. 3 minutes before playing it against one of the best players in the world. So that's that it's different a little bit than the ladder. Sometimes people will bring decks that you don't usually see. And so that was kind of fun. I mean, it's all about really if winning a tournament is great, right? You got to get super lucky and hopefully play well to win a tournament. But only one person gets to win the tournament, obviously, and there's a bunch of really, really good players out there. So if the real goal of the tournament has to be to go in, to enjoy it, to really learn something, to try to improve as a player. And like on those goals, like thumbs up, mission success. Learned a whole heck of a lot compared to where I was going into the tournament, and that was really kind of the fun part for me. Yeah.
You mentioned there was a lot of diversity in the tournament. So was there any deck that felt so fun to play against, or any deck that you were like, okay, this is very creative, I love it, that you faced?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. Yeah, I don't nothing that really. I mean, like I would say that there were decks that I really appreciated for their creativity, like the Foundry deck, right? Or there were some interesting Viego decks I guess I ran into. Nothing that really called to me to immediately play. So I'll keep an eye out. I'll see if I can find something in the future. Yeah.
Nice. This is one of the questions that I usually ask people because you also mentioned Team Aretuza. Who helped you prepare for this tournament?
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
guys helped you in the
Yeah,
tournament? And
no,
now you can give them a shout out.
yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's fantastic. So obviously, Sergio Vamos has been helping me. I've been bugging him so much since the beginning of coming back to LOR. So big kudos to him for giving me a lot of really excellent advice and tips and helping me get better pretty fast. But also on TA. I mean, really all of TA. It was willing to answer questions and pitch in. Asher, M-Tuck, the other guys. But Gavardia and Octopuses. Octo was previously on TA. He's not anymore, but he's come to LOR and done really well. And those guys are just like my friends from years back. Like they're great. I played with them in Gwent, had an amazing time. Lost to them a bunch of times, and I figured, hey, I'll come over to LOR and maybe hopefully get a chance to lose to them again. But no, they've been great, and really I feel very lucky in that card games are really fun, and in-person card games, you sit, you meet people, you travel around, right? You build a community, you make friends, right? And finding the way to do that in online card games just like has made all the difference, right? Finding a way into Team Air 2s those years ago, meeting the folks in that team, guys and girls, making friends with them, getting to meet some of them in real life, traveling sort of around the world or seeing them, whether I'm going for a work trip or going to a tournament and having other people show up. I mean, that building those connections in that community, I mean, that's the real takeaway, right? Like I don't have any aspirations. I mean, it would be great, but I don't really have any aspirations to be the world champion of Legends of Runeterra, right? Or to be a professional, card gaming player. Nothing like that, right? It's just sort of one piece, that hopefully goes into balance, sort of with the rest of the things I do in my life. And so really the best thing to take out of it, I think, is just really getting to hang out and make connections with friends that you have and get to play with them on that. And so yeah, I feel super lucky that like they all moved to LOR. I decided to come to LOR. Hey, they all were, and we got to hang out a bit again. So that's been really great.
Since you are one of the many people who actually play in a team, I need to ask you as well, what areas did you feel like you improved playing with a team, exchanging opinions with other people?
I mean, it's just top to bottom, right? I mean, that's the great thing about card gaming nerds. You start them talking about card games, and they have opinions on everything, right? Card selection and decks, how to play certain matchups, what's good against other things. And there's just so much going on in this game right now, right? That like you can get totally lost if you're new. What's good against this? I have no idea. What statistics are good to look at? I have no idea. Why are we running this card here? I have no idea. I saw it somewhere. So just being able to bounce things off, it's sort of immeasurable how much of a help that is for people just trying to to get in and learn about what's going on. Yep.
Awesome. And we are near at the end of the interview, and we have one more traditional question that we ask everyone in the end, and that one is, if you would have to say only one thing to the people now watching, which one would that be?
Only one thing. Okay. Um, I think the answer is find the balance. Card games are great because it's something you can do for your lifetime, right? Like if you're, I have no ability to play any other kind of video game that requires fast twitch things like the way that I could, when I was younger, and I wasn't even good then. But card games are something. I mean, you look at the Magic the Gathering scene, right? And you see guys like pros from like the '90s or the aughts, right, who are like in their 40s now, and some of them are still hanging around and doing great, and part of that community. So I think that's really the thing. Find your balance and find your community. Try to meet some folks. Work card games into your life as part of your life, and like keep it there. Sometimes you'll have more time to do it. Sometimes you might have less time as you go through. But if you're always just sort of keeping it in mind that, hey, I've got a little bit of time now, maybe I can explore this. Then I think that's really rewarding, and it's a way of being able to really do something that you love on the side, for the long run, as opposed to just doing it for a short period of time.
That's an awesome way to end this interview, because it has been a pleasure, and we hope to see you around as well. From my understanding, we're going to see you at least in this week's fight night, and who knows, maybe you win that one as well.
If I have the opportunity and the cards are blessed in that way again, then yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's just been a real pleasure. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me. I've had a real sort of whirlwind but fun introduction to the LOR scene over the last few weeks, and yeah, looking forward to getting to meet more folks and hopefully have some good matches.
Glad to hear it. And with that, this interview is over, guys, but there's many more to come, because there's another week, there's new tournaments in the weekend, during the week. Every single time there's a tournament. So we're making sure we're covering every single champion. So stay tuned. See you next time.